tonight. One second. Our hope is that you all enjoy the questions that our exec board has created. We'll finish up after all these questions are done. We'll open the floor for any questions the audience may have. So if you have any questions, just write them in the chat, or at the end, feel free to unmute yourself and then ask your question. So without further ado, let's have our lovely panelists introduce themselves, tell us briefly where you're currently working, if you're comfortable with saying this, when you graduated Westchester, and then one last thing is what you miss about being at Westchester. Anyone like to go first?
So I'll start us off.
Great, please do.
My name is Maura. I graduated in 2019 from Westchester with my BSW, and I currently work at Park Lane at Bellingham, which is a skilled nursing home. So it's part rehab and then part long-term care for older adults. And one thing that I miss most about Westchester is my classes and my classmates.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Who's next? Would Lily like to go?
Sure. So my name's Lily. I graduated Westchester in 2016, and then I graduated with my master's in 2019 from Westchester. I currently work at Bucks County Children and Youth, and I also do 1099 work as a mobile therapist on the side. And the thing that I miss most about Westchester is like living 5 minutes from all my friends and all the awesome food that you guys have there.
I know, I feel like I miss it too. And then our last but not least, Beth.
Hi, I am Beth O'Rourke. I graduated in 2006 from Westchester. I currently work for Downingtown Area School District at Downingtown East High School. And actually I've done my entire career in schools, but a few different ones, and also different levels. And one thing that I miss about Westchester, oh my gosh, so many things. I just loved Westchester, but I loved the classes, the professors, my friends. I was really involved with the clubs as well, with Phi Alpha, the social work club, the newsletter. So I just loved being a part of campus.
Oh, wow, that is awesome.
Also, the next year in 2007, graduated with my master's from Widener.
Awesome, wow. All right, well, thank you for everyone for sharing. Now, as we move on to our questions, some of our exec board members of Phi Alpha are gonna first introduce themselves and then ask a question to the alumni panelists. So our first question will be asked by Princey.
Hey guys, my name is Princey and I'm a senior. I am on the public relations aspect of Phi Alpha, and my question is for, I'm gonna go with Beth. So my question for you is, can you tell us about your current job and the population that you currently are working with?
Sure. Yeah. So I work for Downingtown Area School District, and I work at Downingtown East High School. We have 3 high schools in the district, but I work at one of them. So my title there actually is prevention specialist. So my partner who works with me actually has a license in professional counseling. So it's interesting switching, because I worked for Upper Darby School District for 10 years before switching to Downingtown a couple years ago. And there I was part of social workers. So everyone in my role had a social work degree. So it's interesting now being in a role that is very similar, but isn't all social workers in our position. And now I work with high schoolers. So anyone from 9th to 12th grade, which is like 14 to 18-ish. But I also have experience working in elementary as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your feedback.
Of course.
And does Lily or Maura want to talk more in depth of what you all do?
Oh, sure. Maura, did you want to go first?
All you, Lily.
So I work mainly at Bucks County Children and Youth. I work with parents of young children. Typically, they're under the age of 4. The division that I work in, we are kind of like on the front end. So we work on like stabilizing the family and trying to prevent placement. Most families come in because of drug use, but we also see like maybe unexplained injuries, like they might be having an issue with housing, there might be mental health, but just typically like in the area that I work in, we have a huge problem just with drug use. So it tends to be like most of our referrals come in through that. And then with I don't know if anybody's interested in like 1099 work if you do get your master's, but that's like independent contracting. And I work as a mobile therapist. So I work mostly with like kids with autism or like maybe some sort of severe behavioral issue. And we just work on like helping them like learn how to de-escalate, deal with their emotions, like verbalize what they're feeling. And just, I mean, really whatever comes up with them, like maybe socializing if they need help with that too.
And then I am a social worker at a skilled nursing home. So my population is older adults. Really anybody can actually go into a skilled nursing home for rehab, for short-term inpatient physical, occupational, speech therapy, and skilled nursing. The youngest person that I've worked with was like 58. And then I work with everybody, you know, typically that is Medicare aged, which is 60. And then I think the oldest person I've worked with is 102. So, but my job entails the first floor of the facility is short-term rehab. So it's people that have come in from, you know, strokes or hospitalizations, hip replacements, knee replacements, every stereotypical older adult problem that you can think of is a frequent occurrence. And then the upstairs population is our long-term care patients. So it's residents who are unable to care for themselves to the extent that, you know, even living in an assisted or independent living facility, they wouldn't be able to care for themselves. Some of them have dementia, and that's why they're unable to care for themselves, but others are cognitively intact and, you know, just physically are not able to keep themselves safe.
Also, before I don't forget, Lauren Baker, she is also our panelist. If you have a moment, can you introduce yourself? Can you tell us a little bit briefly about what you're doing in your field of social work, if you're comfortable, when you graduated at Westchester, and then one thing you miss about the campus?
Sure. So I'm Lauren Baker. I graduated with my BSW from Westchester University in 2017. And then I graduated with my MSW also from Westchester in 2019. I currently work at Chester County Department of Community Development under their Decade to Doorways initiative. I work from like a policy level and more macro level. Our target population is people experiencing homelessness. I've worked with the homeless population in direct service, individuals, families, single moms. And so one thing that I miss about Westchester University is all the great mentors you have. But luckily I get to connect with them in other ways now that I'm out and, you know, being a field instructor, and I've made some great friends in this program. So I do miss you guys, but I get to see you in a different capacity.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to our second question. This question is going to be asked by another board member on our committee. So Destiny, take it away.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Destiny Riley, and I am the treasurer for Phi Alpha. The question that I have is, what is the greatest challenge that you have with working with your specific population? I'm sure there's lots of challenges, but if you can think of one thing that really stands out, we'd appreciate that.
All right, who's gonna volunteer? Does Beth or Lily,
For us,
Lauren?
I mean, there's so many challenges. I'm just going to kind of like talk off the top of my head, but I mean, I think, in the school system, especially when you're working in a high school, that most of them are over the age of 14, so they can consent to mental health treatment. But I think, we're dealing with teenagers, but then we're also dealing with their parents, and they may or may not be on the same page, or, maybe the teen wants something and the parent doesn't, or the parent wants something and the teen doesn't. And, I think for us is just, and sometimes we want something that, or we see that they would benefit from something, and, just trying to, just work with all the systems involved with a student, looking at, themselves, their parents, everyone else who's involved in their life, whether it's, teachers, counselors, outside therapists, just kind of working with like all the systems and, just, yeah, I mean, I think just like balancing all that out, and then also I think that different people have different levels of boundaries. We have some students and parents who want to share everything with us. And then we have others that, want to share like minimal things with us. So like, for example, if I have a student who's hospitalized or at a partial hospitalization and comes back, some people want to share all the paperwork and information with us, and others want to share really minimal, and so, I just think that there's all these just, like there can be like challenges or barriers that we're kind of looking at, and, just, either with information we're getting or sharing. So those are just kind of some of the things that kind of popped into my head when I saw that question.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
I guess I'll chime in. It's from the type of work that I do now is very different from direct service. So it's not necessarily the population, but maybe the setting per se. Being a social able to look at people from multiple facets, right? It's a multidimensional lens, a systems theory lens, and working with, and I guess this could be applied to any job you have and the environment that you're in, is that working with other people, other colleagues that don't come from the same kind of educational background as you, or for example, working in a government entity, you have to balance your own, what might be a better way of going about things to serve people, looking at the whole person, but, perhaps it's not like the policies that are at play kind of tie your hands a little bit. For example, the Department of Community Development and the realm of housing and homelessness, we're under, the Housing and Urban Development definition of homelessness, which is people living on the street. When there's so many people that are precariously housed that the dollars that we manage cannot serve those individuals. So you're constantly at the mercy of all these other factors at play, and it's just a matter of how you can do your best in that little niche and how to continue to maybe chip away at these other areas to get as many people served and most effectively.
Thank you.
So I would say, just from my end, like some of the biggest challenges that we face is the fact that like we're not a voluntary service. Like you have to, like when you get a referral for children and youth, it's kind of like forced on you. You can't really kind of say, no, I don't want this involvement. And parents are usually really upset when we're called. So I think that's just a really big challenge too, because we like are there because we want to help and we want to stabilize the family, but people can't always see that. And then I also think it kind of depends on where they're at with their stage of change. So like if they're not really ready to admit that they have a problem or that something like isn't going right at home, it can make it really hard to help them. And it can make it really hard for us to like have success while working with them. And I like see that with, parents all the time, like just depending on where they're at, like if they want help, if they don't want help, if they're willing to work with us, if they're not. And I think just like finding resources for parents too. I mean, it's so hard to like find housing right now. I mean, it's always been a challenge, but finding housing right now for people, it's really hard. And, you know, I have some clients that might be like at the mercy of couch surfing, or like they might be able to find a hotel for that week or whatever it is. So like they're not considered homeless, but it's like just barely not homeless. So but that's a huge challenge too. And even finding like places to go for treatment. And now that everything's virtual, I think it's really hard for parents who are engaged in different forms of treatment. So just a lot of challenges.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think some of the same challenges, just in terms of connecting people to resources, there just never seems to be enough support and resources where you need it. But I think right now, initially, when I saw that the question about, you know, the biggest challenge of working with this population, I think would be COVID has like really, you know, as I'm sure you all know, like hit nursing homes and hit the older adult population pretty significantly. And the facility that I work in has been extremely fortunate and extremely cautious and hasn't gotten any cases of COVID, and has been able to maintain our population. But it's still that barrier between, you know, we want to keep us safe, we're on total lockdown, we need to make sure that, you know, all PPE is being used, and that, you know, basically we're just putting people in these bubbles to keep them alive. But then you see somebody with dementia who doesn't necessarily know how to eat unless they are in a social setting of a dining room and seeing, you know, it's so subconscious and it's so ingrained in you that you assume that people just, you know, can eat on their own and whatever. But we've really seen the isolation physically, emotionally, and mentally take such a significant toll on the population that it's almost like, you know, there have been points where we bring them outside for a family visit before we were sort of facilitating the visits regularly, just because, you know, it's almost worth them getting COVID. Otherwise, you know, they've lost 30 pounds and they, you know, their dementia has progressed, and it's just, they're not the same person that they were. So I think finding that balance of keeping our facility safe and keeping our whole population, you know, alive and COVID free versus being the social worker and the activities department, even really having to advocate for them on a psychosocial end, and allowing them to have those supports in addition to them just like being safe generally medically.
Yeah, that is definitely a hard time. Yeah. All right, thank you all for sharing that. Our next question, just so we're speeding it up and don't waste too much, is by Lisa. It's for Lisa. So take it away.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm the Community Service Chair. And my question is, how did your experience at Westchester help shape your career now?
I can start. So throughout a series of field placements got me to the job that I have now. So that's a very direct way of how my experiences at Westchester helped me in my career now, shape my career now. I think the education that you get just in your BSW, I mean, the whole general's practice, it really is applicable to all levels of social work. Sometimes it may not be as easy to like see the connections being in a macro placement, but it does really equip you to work with so many different individuals, so many different communities, and multi-layers social work. So, yeah.
Just going off of what Lauren said, I feel like the focus that we have on internships at Westchester really played a role. I had 3 semesters of an internship when I finished with my BSW, and some people that I started working with, like they had only gotten 1 semester. So that was just a huge difference. And it really helped me, you know, be prepared to enter into the field. I also got my job through my internship, kind of in a roundabout way. But my first job out of college was through my internship. And I feel like we did a lot of role playing, especially like in undergrad, and that helped a lot too. And we focus a lot on systems theory, which I find helpful now, especially like just trying to understand where people are at and understanding like why this person might be acting the way that they are. Like it just helps to like kind of understand all the different layers that might be going on underneath them that you can't necessarily see.
Yeah, I think that my experience at Westchester just made me overall like a more confident person and a more confident social work. I think we focus a lot on professionalism at Westchester, and you focus a lot on meeting different competencies in your syllabus. And, you know, when you're in undergrad and your professors are telling you to read through your syllabus, you're skimming it and you're looking at deadlines, but there are different areas that they talk about competencies of really the goals of like why you're in that class and why you're learning. And you don't realize it until you're in field or you're in your internship, but there are like direct exact relations to applicable skills. And I think Westchester, like Lauren was saying, just from a generalist perspective, I feel more than equipped to work in a medical setting and with professionals. Like I am the only advocate on a team of nurses and physicians and administrators, and they're really looking to the social work team to sort of be that connecting piece between disciplines. And I think that just sort of speaks to the importance of social work and the importance of social work ideals. And especially now, I think Westchester really gave me the confidence and the competency to be able to be successful and know going into that job that I was prepared for it.
Awesome. Really awesome. It's exciting to hear. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I heard that many of you are getting jobs out of field placements. I don't know if I heard that correct, but that's really exciting. But go ahead, Beth. Sorry.
I just was going to piggyback. I mean, I really can just say that, I agree with everything that everyone else has said. As far as, how Westchester kind of prepared me, I think that the internship was huge, and in class you learn that, social work is such a broad profession. You can do it in so many different, settings. I remember in class just being interested in learning more about school social work. But I had interest in all types of social work. And so I decided to do an internship in a school, and I never turned back. My next internship was in a school, and my next one was in a school, and then I got a job in a school. And, I don't think that's everyone's path. I think a lot of people try it a lot of different settings, and, I could have seen myself going in that direction too. But yeah, I think that was huge, was the strong field placements through Westchester.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so moving on to our next question. Our next question is going to be asked by Emily. So Emily, take it away.
I'm Evan, Phi Alpha. And my question is, what is your biggest piece of advice for social workers who are about to enter the field?
I can start if that's okay. I like prepared notes before.
Go ahead. I love that.
But I would say establish your self-care routine and establish it quickly. In the beginning, work might not seem that stressful or that busy, but when it rains, it pours. So just definitely make sure that you have your self-care in place, whatever it is that helps you at the end of the day, because it's a lot easier to implement those habits before things get crazy. And I would also say just to try to leave work at work. Sometimes it's really hard, but I've had nights where I'm not sleeping because I'm worried about a client, and it's just, it's not good for my clients if I'm showing up to work half asleep because I was up half the night worried about them. So just trying to leave it there and remember that you can't fix everything in a day, and just try to be well rested and ready.
That's similar to the advice that I had prepared as well, is that you're never going to have the right answers, and you're also always going to have the best answers, and just overall that you're doing enough just by being a social worker and being present for your population or whoever you're advocating to. I think it's really easy to say, like, for example, I have a lot of trouble with the fact that I am working in a for-profit medical sector. And granted, I work with beneficiaries of Medicare, which is, you know, socialist and like well supported. But I think I really struggle with the fact that like a lot of my clients like don't have financial issues, and you know, I don't work with a lot of clients of color, and I think that it's hard to compare yourself to like Brene Brown when you're just a social worker in a nursing home. But I think it's important to know that no matter what field of social work you're going into, like you're changing someone's life, you're impacting someone's life, whether it's once a year you make an impact on somebody or 4 times a day, you're still doing, you know, more work than so many other people, and you're doing what makes you passionate. And if you're not doing what makes you happy, then you just have to, you know, push it aside. But just like Lily was saying, like really put yourself first, but not to say like, you know, don't ever say, oh, well, I'm a social worker, so I'm doing enough, so I'm not going to read the NASW newsletter, and I'm not going to go advocate for low income communities because I'm a social worker. It's so important to still hold yourself to you know, be better and do better, but also know that you can only be and do so much.
So important.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I was going to say the same thing about self-care. I mean, it's huge, you know, and, you know, like I said, I graduated in 2006, you know, so I've been working for a long time. And I'll tell you, self-care and boundaries, I think was something that I'm still working on, you know, we're probably all still working on, you know, but in the beginning of my career, like sometimes I mean, I would just work and work and work. Like sometimes, you know, I worked in elementary school and I could have left at 3:30, but sometimes I was working until 6 and 7 at night to try to get more and more done. And, you know, at the end of the day, like now I'm not, you know, I have kids and, you know, I can't do that anymore, you know, but I think you know, you have to like, I almost wish that like the younger self, you know, my younger self said like, okay, like enough is enough, you know, like there's always going to be more work, you know, and spent like a little bit more time maybe with friends or family or, you know, maybe set my self-care routine maybe a little bit more, you know, in the beginning. So I guess that would be my advice, you know, is just to, you know, to do your job and, you know, do it well and put your all into it. And if you have to work late every once in a while, fine. But, you know, at some point you have to kind of hang your hat up for the day and head home. So, you know, that would be my thought too, is just to make sure you have, you know, all your self-care routines in place and, you know, that you set some sort of boundaries with work.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
I guess I'll chime in. I mean, again, self-care. You know, I think people talk a lot about self-care, but I feel like you can't quite always get your hands around how important it is. But also in terms of workplace, you know, I asked myself this, and I've had a couple, you know, different social work jobs since I graduated with my BSW. And I always ask myself, do I feel energized by this job? And am I growing in this job? I think that's another realm of self-care that I think isn't always talked about. Like, yeah, you have your self-care routine, but in terms of like your career and what truly energizes you is what's going to truly keep you going. And, you know, it's okay to stay in a job because of the stability, but there's also comes a time where you have to make that balance and that choice of, is this truly fulfilling myself to keep going?
Yes, definitely, definitely. Thank you, thank you. Moving on, again, our next question is going to be presented by Becky.
Hi guys, I'm Becky and I'm the secretary for Phi Alpha, and my question is, what are the most rewarding parts of working in the social work field and doing your job?
I think one of the really cool things about working in a high school is, sometimes you're working with someone for up to 4 years, and they may be dealing with whatever struggles they have, whether it's mental health related or family related or whatever it is. And there's just something so cool every year in seeing kids that you've, watched struggle and you've supported for a long time and seeing them graduate from high school. I mean, so like that is just something that every year is like it's just very rewarding to watch. And of course there's other rewards along the way, when you see, people overcome their obstacles. But for me, that's a huge reward to just see they've made it, and they're ready to move on to their next stage of life.
I would say it's something similar, like with my field, just like seeing a family recover and seeing them like kind of stabilize. And, with some parents that I've worked with, like you just literally see the light just like come back into their eyes. And it's like just such a beautiful thing to see that happen. And it's just such a cool feeling when you get to like close out a case, because that's a huge accomplishment for most of my clients. It's like when we get to close out a case, like we're saying, you did what you needed to do, you're doing a great job at, parenting and maintaining your recovery, or just like whatever the reason was that they were involved with us. So that's definitely like my favorite part of the job is when you see people just recover.
Yeah, I think probably similar to both of their answers is like the success portion of it. I think it's really easy for that to be your favorite part of the job, especially in like the rehab setting portion of my job. It's amazing to see somebody come in after a stroke and be debilitated and have a feeding tube and not be able to speak, and then 6 years of therapy and crying and working with families, they're able to successfully discharge, whether that's to a higher level of care than they were previously. It's still really great to see, those big milestones and those big accomplishments be made. But then on the other piece of it, I think with the long-term care people, especially right now with COVID, them not being able to connect as well with their loved ones, I think being able to create moments of joy for them of, going through old pictures with them, and maybe they don't remember, but maybe they're like, wow, that's a really cute kid. And I'm like, well, it is yours, but that's okay. Like, I think just doing little things and allowing, the families to be a part of that as much as they can, whether that's having a Zoom call and I go through something with the family, with the resident, or calling them after and just saying like, hey, thanks for that tip of, going through their paintings that they made when they were in their 30s. It brought them a lot of joy and made them really smile. I think it's the very little things too of just making people feel connected on the most basic level.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So my next question is, what is the hardest thing you had to learn as a social worker? I know we talked about some of the challenges you have currently in your field that you're at right now, but what is the overall challenge that you all have or may have had in the past? Anyone want to
So the hardest thing that I had to learn as a social worker, so I'm like totally a big planner, plan things out. I mean, Lily, you took notes. I did not take notes this time, but I was just like, that's just so her. You got to roll with the punches sometimes, and you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to have all the right answers or the answer. An answer. And it's okay to admit your fault. I think you gain so much more credibility when you do admit your fault, or you don't know something. So builds with whether you're working with a client or an agency or, a different, at any level. I think, admitting your fault or that you don't know something, and like also trusting yourself when you roll with the punches. You do know, and you've learned a lot in your classes that you do have the tools, you just got to exercise them. So trust yourself.
I would say for me, I'm sure I said it already, but just like working with people that don't want to work with you and trying to figure out how to engage them and how to build rapport and have them trust you. And I think something my supervisor said to me a couple of weeks ago was, she's like, sometimes you're a social worker and sometimes you're a caseworker, and like sometimes you have to separate that, because we can't, like, I love being a social worker, I love that piece of my job. But sometimes, like, we are a mandated service. Like, we do have to file for dependency sometimes with children. We do have to give bad news to parents. So I think, like, and sometimes, sorry, that's my dog. And sometimes we kind of have to be like strict. And that's really hard for me, to be firm with somebody, to give them news that they don't want, or to kind of like mandate that they do something that they don't want to do. It's really hard to boss, I don't want to say boss people around, but that's kind of part of my job sometimes. And it's just really challenging to like, still like bring that social work element to the job, but then you have to also be a caseworker and make sure that you're following child welfare laws, and you have to follow laws that you don't agree with all the time, which is super frustrating. I have clients that are involved sometimes for like really stupid reasons, and they'll be like, this is like a stupid reason. And I'm kind of like, yes, it is. But I never said it to them. But, so like that's really challenging too, because like sometimes I do agree with them that it's like silly, but I still have to follow the law. I mean, marijuana is a big issue. I don't know if, you guys are talking about that in class or not, like the legalization of it. That's a huge issue with my clients. They'll get involved because of that. And it's so frustrating because it's legal, medical marijuana is legal, but you can't use it for recreational use. But then different states have it legalized for recreational use. So it's just difficult that it's not kind of across the board. Is it legal? Is it not? And I understand people's frustration with it. So
I actually don't have anything else to add to that, but I just want to say, Lily, that that's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that there's a difference between there's a caseworker and a social worker. And I really greatly appreciate that, because I think you're so right. Like, I think it's very hard as social workers to differentiate between like, what does a case manager and a caseworker do versus like, what does a social worker do? And I do feel like that pull, but I've never been able to articulate it. So I really appreciate that.
I'll have to let my supervisor know. She articulated it for me, because she's like, I was feeling really frustrated. And she's like, yeah, it's because you want to be a social worker with this case, but like, they're really not allowing you to do that. So it's a hard balance.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Anyone else want to say anything else? If not, we can go ahead and move on to our next question. Okay, so our next question is going to be asked again by Destiny. So take it away.
Hello again. So my next question is, what is your favorite population that you've worked with, and why? And if you've only worked with like one population, you could, branch out into different subgroups within your population or something like that.
Well, I'll start. I've always worked in schools, but I have worked in, I guess, all the levels if you include my internships, but I've mostly done elementary and high school in my jobs. And I really love my job. So, but I would say that I really do love working with the high school population. And I think that is because, I can work a little bit more with the students on what's going on. I can work with them on coping strategies and getting them connected with resources, and, just have, just more kind of intelligent conversations with them at their level, whereas opposed to elementary, sometimes you're working just more with the parents, a little bit less with the students, or working more with students on like social skills and stuff like that. And I think I just enjoy kind of working with the older population and the things that they're going through.
So in my internships, I actually worked with the criminal justice system. And then I also worked with children at Children's Hospital Philadelphia in one of their care network sites. And I think that my favorite population thus far would be my older adults, just because it's such a blend of the two populations that I've worked with before. Because when I was working with criminal justice, I was working with people that were in prison and they were trying to be released, and I was trying to make them successful upon release, made sure that they had resources so that they wouldn't return to prison. And then in the children's hospital, I was working with, you know, children were really my clients, but I was working with the family unit. And then now with older adults, I'm working with people who are trying to get out of skilled rehab, and I'm trying to set them up, and I want to make sure they don't come back to skilled rehab, which is like the same as the criminal justice. And then, you know, the children of the residents and the short-term rehab patients that are like, half the time I'm like, okay, listen, I'm not your social worker. I'm going to get you some resources, but I really suggest you get yourself some county assistance, some good old-fashioned therapy. But I think that I like each one of those just because of all their different challenges and things. And I mean, the older adult population, I think gets a bad rep for being old and cranky, but they are the funniest, most passionate, hardworking group of people that I've worked with.
Awesome.
I really couldn't pick a favorite. I've worked with 3 different populations since I graduated, and I've really enjoyed working with all of them. They all have like just a lot of different strengths that they bring to the table. I worked with people with like chronic disabilities, like traumatic brain injury, stuff like that when I first got out of college. And it was really cool to see them like become more independent, and just to really see them become like successful. So that was really cool. And then, you know, with children and youth, like I do really enjoy working with the parents. Like I like seeing them succeed, and I like knowing that, you know, I was able to help them get to that place, and the babies are super cute. So that part is fun. And then with the therapy that I do on the side, it's really cool to see kids just start to like socialize better with their siblings or with their friends, and see them like start to use the de-escalation, that like we drill de-escalation strategies into them like all the time. And then, you know, the first time that you see them use it independently, it's just the coolest thing. So, I mean, each population is going to have its challenges, but I think each population is just going to have some really amazing strengths to them as well. So, it's just hard to pick a favorite.
Definitely. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Our next question is going to be asked again by Lisa. So feel free to take it away.
Hi. So does politics and the recent election play a factor in the population you serve today? And if so, how?
Yes. So with where I'm at, we're mandated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And so sometimes, yeah, you can see when you're working one-on-one with someone how the greater social climate affects them. But on a policy level, it's so direct. You know, when you think about, so the head honcho at HUD is Ben Carson, and him being more of a right-leaning individual, and how that influences the strategic plan to end homelessness and the policies that we have to implement and govern how we implement like and organize our community and our agencies that we work with to end homelessness, prevent and end homelessness, is going to be very different from, you know, who the next president is going to be putting in that spot. And I don't always agree with the policies that come through, but I mean, like I said, you try your best, and you interweave like your practices and your evidence base and trauma-informed care and whatnot into what you can make change in. As long as you shift your perspective into what you can impact, that helps the frustration in the areas that you can't. But yes, very much.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much exactly what she said. Like, there's not a lot that we do as social workers, I think, as a field that isn't impacted by political decisions and by people who don't work with our populations. And like, obviously, most specifically for me, like COVID and Medicare, like my whole facility is 99.9% funded by Medicare. And what age that benefit starts and how those benefits are handed out, and you know, all the different little politics games that people play with it. It really, really directly impacts. Sorry, my dogs are having a blast right now. They love social work. They're really, it just really like directly, like Lauren said, like the biggest policies impact people so on such a micro level, even though it's something so macro. And I think that especially with COVID, everyone has played it as such a political game, but it's people's lives, it's people's mental health, it's all those things. And I think to say that, you know, there's people that are not affected by politics and not affected, I think there's a lot of people that just don't realize that they're affected so directly by every single policy that is put into place.
Just to add to that, I used to work with the Medicaid population. I worked at Cerebral Palsy Association of Chester County. I was there from 2016 to the beginning of 2020, and we entered Pennsylvania oh my gosh, sorry. Pennsylvania went through a huge change with Medicaid in 2019, and it went to a private sector. So because of that, they were just cutting funding everywhere. So I have clients that ended up more, falling more, just not having the right care that they needed in home because of the policy change. And then ultimately, my agency, like the adult department, just evaporated. Like we were all laid off because the private funding for Medicaid didn't want to pay like the small entities to do the social work piece of it, or the service coordination piece of it, as they called it. So they went like in-house. So by December of 2019, like just our job just essentially like didn't exist anymore. So I mean, it was just a real, like it was just really evident to see like how policies affected like my clients, how it ended up affecting me and like my job in the long run. So, and most people didn't even realize what was going on, which is kind of crazy too. It was just a huge policy change in Medicaid in 2019. So.
Absolutely crazy. Wow. Anyone else is good and doesn't want to pitch in? We can move on to our next question. Emily, go ahead.
Again. So did you feel prepared after graduating with your BSW for field work? And if you got your MSW, did you feel even more prepared after that, or not?
So I went right on for my master's after, and I guess I did that for a couple things, a couple reasons. One, I really think that the master's degree in social work just opens so many more doors. I really think that it opens so many more doors. And then also, for financial reasons, you make more money. But for me, after I did my 2 internships in schools, I knew I wanted to continue to work in a school. And most school districts require you to have a master's degree and a home and school visitor certification. So that was what I looked for, was a master's program that offered both. So, which is why I ended up going to Widener. I love Westchester. It has my heart, but they don't offer the open school visitors certificate. So that's why I went right away and got my master's. So, as much as I loved my BSW program, I did feel like getting the master's degree, really opened up a lot of doors for me. So that's kind of how I made my decision. And I also am just going to, I just also feel like for me, it was the right thing to do right away. For some people, I feel like they want to go and kind of get some job experience and get going that way. But for me, I just wanted to get it out of the way rather than having a full-time job and going back and trying to balance a job and school and, I knew I wanted to have my own family someday. And so for me, it just worked out to kind of go right into it and just get it done. So, everyone's path is different, but that was mine.
Yeah, I would say I would 100% agree with that. I think my BSW in the field that I'm in, like I'm in a medical field, which in most medical fields you do need your master's, but I think my bachelor's from Westchester like fully equipped me in terms of like my knowledge base, my professionalism, my competencies. I think overall it really did prepare me to be a social worker in the field. But I mean, exactly what Beth was saying is that like if I want to progress at all, if I want to continue to assist people on a more macro level and make any more money at all, like you do have to get your master's. And I'm sure that there's going to be value in me getting my master's, and I'm sure I'm going to learn and grow, but it just seems like 30 grand that I really don't really want to spend to continue to do the same work that I feel like 3 years in the field would do just as much for me as a year in my master's. But at the same time, it's I do want a little bit more of a specialized education. So I think in that way, I think an MSW would prepare me even better to, serve the population that I want to serve.
To piggyback off of that, I got my BSW in 2016. I was really fighting with whether or not I wanted to go right into grad school, but actually Dr. Tolley was a big reason with why I chose to work for a year before going back. I just remember having him in class and him like encouraging us to go and get the experience. And I felt that was really beneficial for me. I also sought out a job that was going to pay for my master's. So that was pretty much how I based my decision of where I was going to work when I finished. So the first job I had out of school, they paid for my master's program. I still had to work full time while I went, which was challenging. But Westchester, their MSW program is amazing. They were able to work with me so that way I could continue to work full time and also go to class in person. And then my job also worked with me to kind of like flex my hours a little bit so that way I could work a little bit longer some days and make it to campus by 4:30. And I mean, and the MSW program just has amazing professors. So does the BSW program. But I felt like they really prepared me for my LSW. I don't have any regrets with waiting for my MSW. That was definitely the best decision for me. I felt like I could, apply knowledge from my current cases to my schoolwork. But I did take my LSW exam like pretty much right after I graduated. And I would definitely suggest doing that, like take, some time to study, make sure that you're prepared for it. But I know a lot of people that get their MSW and then for whatever, a lot of people I've noticed are just really nervous to take the test. But I would suggest just like getting that out of the way. I knew I just didn't want to wait on that. And having the LSW has made a huge difference for me. So definitely would recommend, going that next step after getting your MSW.
So it took me forever to get my BSW because I worked while I went to school. But coming out of school, yeah, like I said before, you're equipped with the tools to be able and the skills to be able to work at all levels and with anyone. I did the same thing as Lily, but my job didn't pay for my master's. I took a year and I worked at Safe Harbor here in town, doing case management work with single men and women experiencing homelessness. And when I decided to go for my MSW, I knew I was going to eventually go. I think the year out helps, again, give you the application to like go even deeper, to like you can look back at your previous cases and apply what you're learning. Yeah, the professors there are just as great as the professors in the undergraduate department. I feel like I don't need my MSW for the current job that I'm in. It only requires a BSW. Which is another reason why I did not take my LSW exam right out of school. And now I'm going to take my LSW and I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. But there's there's prep courses that can help you with that if you don't decide to do it right away. For me, I didn't feel like it was financially necessary because my job didn't require it, didn't even require MSW. And to keep your license, I mean, it costs money and time to do the CEUs. But now I'm looking to do a career change and possibly go into like sex therapy and gender and sexuality studies. So I will be taking those next steps to get my LSW. So there's so many different ways that you can go about this, and sometimes you don't know what job you're going to get coming out, and that often influences what your next step is. So yep, you can plan, but sometimes things just fall into place as they need to be.
I also just want to say too, I wasn't even thinking about my license when I was talking, and you know, I hear both sides there too. For me, I did end up getting taking the exam right after I graduated with which was good path for me, because I actually felt like I didn't even really need to study, because I felt like in grad school all I was doing was studying for basically. But I also went on to get my LCSW, and I really felt like I grew a lot in that time, because, you know, I was participating in supervision. You have to do a certain amount of supervision hours. And so I did some individual supervision and then also some group supervision. And I was able to do that supervision group with people in different areas of social work. And so that was just a really cool way to just kind of talk about cases with people outside of your job. So just something to think about too, you know, is just, you know, supervision, whether it's peer supervision or, you know, in some kind of group setting or something like that, it's really beneficial and another way to kind of grow as well.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's very, I feel like we don't get a lot of information on just like what to do after. And so I'm really, really pleased that you're explaining to wait sometimes. It's really helpful. Also, moving on to our next and final question before we open it up for anyone else to say anything. It is Joy. So, Joy, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Joy. I am currently a senior majoring in social work, and I am the fundraising chair for Phi Alpha. The last question for the evening is, what is your effective self-care routine?
TikTok.
That's a great question.
I think mostly just like Lily was saying earlier, just like trying my hardest to leave work at work and not worry about it when you get home. It's really the only self-care that you can do. I started 7 or 8 months ago, and in the beginning of October, we got bought by a new company, and I haven't been able to set up my work email on my phone, and I also don't have remote access to my documentation system on my phone. So I realized like a week or two after the transition happened that that's like the best thing that could have happened. And I pulled my IT ticket. I told them I didn't need their help anymore. And I just sort of am gonna leave it at that, and just so that I'm able to, you know, separate the two. And also I have dogs. I recommend pets for self-care, and just like trying to find time for things that, you know, de-stress and make you happy. But like Lauren was saying earlier, like really trying to make it intentional, even when you're not like super stressed out, just making it a part of your day or your week.
Yeah, I would say like definitely establishing a routine. Self-care looks different for everyone, but for me, it's usually like working out in the morning before work. Like I'll typically try to like exercise during the week. That definitely helps me just like have a successful day and be able to focus. I try to eat healthy. Like I feel like when I'm not eating well, like I'm just tired. So I've noticed that really helps me with work, like just having better eating habits. And I have pets too. I have one dog and 2 cats, and that really helps me too. So.
For me, it's a lot of things. I have a cat. I'm a cat mom, so she can be bad, but she's so good for me. taking hikes. I know sometimes I am able to connect with Travis, and getting lost in the woods is great, and it's great therapy. I think Mother Earth is like the greatest of all healers. Yoga, reading, journaling, just making sure that you know when, like you notice when you're a little off balance, and to reconnect with that and get grounded is key. And just, yeah, incorporating it in your normal routine. It's I've been there, don't ever want to be there again. And I think a lot of people say, you know, preach self-care, but it's not something to be overlooked.
I'm sorry I'm late to the meeting. I had another meeting, but I wanted to stop by. This is Dr. P. Just wanted to stop by and say hi to you all, and how proud I am. And I just wanted to say one little thing about self-care is that's right, Lauren. I think we need to have a mindful awareness of self-care. And I am very guilty of not taking care of myself many times. And you know what I do now, especially since COVID started, I put an alarm on my, well, you can't see it, there you go. I put an alarm on my phone, and it goes off every hour. And it reminds me to get up and drink water and stretch and play with my cat too, Miss Emily. So use your phone, you know, to kind of give you a break, even if it's 5 minutes, to kind of just, oh, my alarm went off. I need to focus on my breathing for 5 minutes. It has really come in very handy to me. So just a tip to use your phone. It's so nice to see everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love that suggestion. That reminded me back in the spring, and I really have stopped this, and I wish that I would get back into it. I'll have to do that. But I actually had an alarm that would go off on my phone, and I think it was for like 8 o'clock at night. That's like when my kids are in bed and I'm just like sitting on the couch vegging, and it would go off to remind myself to just note 3 things I was grateful for in the day. And it was something easy. It was something I could pretty much commit to because it only took a few seconds, but it just reminds you to just be grateful, but no matter how challenging of a day it was, there's always something to be grateful for. And so, that was something that I was practicing, but I think like everyone else said, I think just, setting your boundaries, and I also don't keep my work email on my phone because I know if I had it on my phone, I'd be working 24/7. I'd always be checking it. And even now I'm on my work computer, and probably when we log off, I'll probably check my email, but otherwise I don't open it unless something comes up, and I am sort of on call 24/7. So like if a principal calls me and says, hey, whatever, I just heard someone posted something on social media that's concerning and I'm calling a parent, and then I respond, but if it was on my phone, I know I'd be working 24/7. So, so I like those types of boundaries too. And then just figuring out your own self-care. I also have a dog and 2 cats. So, again, proponent of pets as part of the self-care, and, getting in your exercise and spending time with friends and family. And my other thing, lately is just like getting outside, just getting outside, getting some fresh air. I will say I did leave work a little frustrated today, and I worked about an hour longer than I wanted to. And then I got outside and I just was outside. My kids were like drawing with chalk in the street. And it's just like, and you just like realize like, okay, like things, you slow down, notice the simple things, and then you can kind of refocus for the next day. But I think it's something we're all always working on, right?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I show them now. Well, thank you all for answering our questions that our exec board has put together. And right now, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself to ask a question.
I'm going to jump in right now. I want to say hi to all 4 of you that came back. It's so good to see everybody. And I want to acknowledge to the 4 that are back who are absolutely terrific people. I'm very proud of you. But I think I know every student in the room right now, and they're really following very well behind you. You should know the program's in very good shape. There's an incredibly good group of students right here with us right now. My question would be, I have 9 Philadelphia campus students here right now too that I want to give a shout out to. They're from my class in the Philadelphia campus. Beth especially, I think, but also perhaps Lauren being in policy work, but Maura and Lily also. Finding a job, what is the strategy to doing that? The seniors are about to graduate. Even if they wait to get their MSW, like what do you need to put together? What's the right path or strategy, Beth, to get into schoolwork? Because so many students want jobs in schools. And I'm always afraid I have to say, I don't know if there's a job, and it's a tough path. Lauren getting into policy work, but also Maura and Lily, just finding a job that you really like. And what was your strategy to finding jobs?
Honestly, I mean, I think in some ways, I think school social work is growing, you know. I was saying earlier in the presentation that my current job, this is the start of my 3rd year working for Downingtown Area School District. And they've actually hired, after me, 6 additional. They created 6 new positions. So that was awesome to see that they've created the jobs. And previous to this, I worked for Upper Darby School District for 10 years. And in that time, they grew the position a little bit too. But I'll tell you, I guess my first thing would be your first job may not be your dream job. You know, it may be the job that gets you in the door, you know, and I worked for an agency, but before I worked for the school district, and it was a school-based position. And it was a position that I did not love, you know, but it was a position that, you know, I feel like was, you know, a stepping stone for me. You know, and the other thing that I did after that was I really took a chance because I ended up leaving, you know, a full-time job for a job that was really, well, it was a long-term substitute job, but it really wasn't, I wasn't subbing for anyone. It was because it was a grant funded position and they weren't committing to it. And luckily 3 years later, they made the commitment. But honestly, I think it's a couple things. I think that, you know, just knowing, yeah, that first job might not be the dream job. You know, keep trying, you know, and maybe take a chance, you know, if you're able to do that. But I know that that's not always a possibility to take, you know, to walk away from something stable, to take a chance to see if it's going to turn into something.
I actually used Westchester when I was graduating with my undergrad to help me make my resume. They have a great resource there. They got my resume was terrible. And when I graduated with my undergrad, they really like made it look presentable. So that definitely do that, or just like have somebody like look at your resume. I mean, I think that's just so important. And that really helped me. And then just like get to know Indeed really well. It's pretty easy to apply for jobs on there. And when I was looking for the job I have now, I think I applied to like 50 jobs maybe, or something, like something crazy. And then I like went on to some different interviews and was able to find the best fit. Yeah, just apply. And, you know, so, like in the job I have now, like I didn't want this job. I was looking for jobs up until like the day I started, I think, because like I really did not want to work in child welfare. But I really love my job now. I'm happy that I ended up working there. I have a great team, and it is a really great job. So I'm glad that I ended up going, even though I went like fighting.
I think for me, it would probably be the same thing, you know, that Beth was saying, is that like, you're not going to love your first job. And I just remember, I don't know if it was right before or right after I graduated, I was sitting in Dr. Tully's office, just like trying to decide, I'm like, what exactly am I passionate about? What is my dream job? What is my dream population? What is my dream salary? And he was basically just like, why? Like he sort of said how like he worked with the AIDS population and worked with children and worked with, you know, victims of sexual abuse and all those things. And he gained something from each one of them. And I think, you know, going into field placement, Professor Bradley asks you, like, is there any population you really don't want to work with? And I was like, old people? I don't want to work with old people. And it was like the only job that I could find, because I had taken a year off after graduating to travel and sort of figure out what I'm passionate about, and, you know, decided that bartending at Applebee's 5 nights a week just wasn't doing it for me anymore. And so I just really applied to a bunch of random jobs and happened to get this one, and felt, you know, initially very hesitant about it. And I still like get emails bi-weekly from like Glassdoor and Indeed, but that's more so just to like be able to see what's out there in the world, but just be patient and, you know, not saying like, oh, take the first thing that comes to you, because if you're really hesitant about it, like you'll know in your gut that it's not the right fit for you, but also know that it's never going to be your dream job on the first day. Like, not never, but a very, very small percentage of the time is it going to be, you know, the most perfect career that you could have dreamed of. And social work, I see Dr. P talking in the chat, social work provides those options. It does like creates a lot of different pathways for you, and you know, be open to anything, but also don't settle for something that, you know, will make you unhappy.
So to Tully's question to me about getting into macro work, networking, network, like meet as many people as you can, like whether that is within your agency or other agencies that your agency works with. Take on projects that scare you a little bit, that might push you and challenge you. I mean, most of the projects that I had, like I had one placement that was a macro placement that led me to the job that I'm now. It wasn't right out of school either. I did direct service as a case manager. I did enjoy that job, but again, it wasn't my dream job. But, you know, the networking, and no matter what placement I was in, I would look at, apply the GIM, look at the agency as if it's your client, and what is its needs? What kind of like blind spots does, you know, people in that agency have because they've been working in that role for so long? Doing a satisfaction survey for clients. These kinds of things are huge things to write on your resume. Brag a little bit on your resume, pump yourself up on that. It's always one huge tip that I got when I was drafting my resume. I had my field instructor, my senior placement, look over my resume for me. And he said tangible numbers in there, served X amount of clients, drafted this policy that has been approved by this agency, and this agency is being implemented. So yeah, networking is huge though. That's how I got my job now. My previous boss had called me saying, we're creating this position, we would like you for it. So you never know who you're gonna like impress, and those relationships matter in the long run, and keep connected.
Let's put in the chat that if anybody feels a little hesitant to reach out to the university for help with their resume, I encourage you to do it. And if you don't feel comfortable, I am happy to take a look at your resume, your CV. I actually, that's my self-care, believe it or not. When students send me their CV, I love to provide feedback, and you change it and then you send it back. I'm happy to do that for you. It may take a couple of times, to get it done, but having a good resume and CV is essential. And some of you may relate to this. Some of you may not know this, but many jobs use computer systems now to go through resumes. And if you don't have enough words that match the positions that you're applying for on that resume, your resume gets automatically discarded. So it's important that when you're applying for a position that you actually read the position all the way to the end very carefully and highlight any action words like coordinated, facilitated, provided, any action words that are on the job posting. You should be able to use that in your resume. We don't want you to lie, of course, but if you've done the job, if you facilitated groups, if you've done individual counseling, or if you've done macro work and policy, there's a way to tailor your resume to each position that you're applying to. Does that make sense? And so if I'm applying for agency A, they're going to have keywords that they love. And those keywords need to be in that resume if you're going to apply for that job. Agency number two, they're going to love their own words different from agency number one. So you have to kind of keep track. And the federal government it's very notorious for doing that. They just weed through hundreds of applications if there's not enough match. So read those job applications announcements very, very carefully. Highlight those action words, go back to your resume and see where those action words can be put in. I hope that's helpful.
So I would just, hi everyone. It's great to see everybody. It's great to see all of the alums. I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to what you had to say. And kudos to Field. Anyway, I have to say that the number of the juniors are bringing resumes that they've had the Career Center look at, and they have been doing a really nice job with editing resumes and formatting them. So if you have a resume that you're not quite sure of, send it over to them for the formatting. And then maybe send it to Dr. P, who can also edit it for social work language, because you want to make sure that you have a lot of social work language that the Career Center might not be thinking of. But they have been doing a really nice job with the resumes.
I saw a question about grad school, just about like what signs made you decide to wait. I mean, for me, it was like finances. Like I really couldn't afford to go back to school. I put myself through my undergrad. I didn't have a lot of support from my family. And I was in a lot of debt. I was terrified. So I just, and to be honest, I was really nervous that I was going to get into social work and that it wasn't going to be a good fit for me. So I just felt like I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and spending another like $30,000 on something just wasn't the right option for me. And I'm so happy that I did that now. Going and waiting that year was really beneficial. I think it made me a better grad student. I also felt like I was able to manage my time better because I worked full time. And I felt like grad school in a way was almost easier than undergrad because I had work from like 8 to 4 every day. So like I really just had to allocate my time in a different way, where like with undergrad, like I had classes all over the place, and my schedule was just always kind of messy. So I felt like that was just a huge difference. And in a lot of ways, it just made it like way more structured for me. And I was just way more successful with grad school. I mean, I don't know if that's helpful at all, but that was just kind of like why I waited. And then, but it was hard seeing classmates that were going right to grad school. I don't know if like some students are there right now where they see people getting accepted into graduate school and they're still not sure what they want to do. That was kind of hard to see, but it was still the best choice, at least for me.
Yeah, try really hard not to compare yourself to others, just because you're always gonna, like, I just remember senior year sitting in our senior seminar class, and people were getting accepted to grad school and applying and talking about internships, and they were so excited. And I was like, oh my God, I made the wrong choice to take a year off. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where to work. And so again, after another sit down with Dr. Tully, I decided to just take off a year and travel and not think about social work and I feel like I was very privileged to be able to do that because of all the the amount that I worked in undergrad and saved up money to be able to take that time to do that and then continue to work in between traveling different places. But try to prioritize yourself, especially, like, don't try to put yourself on a timeline of, I need to have my master's by this time and I'm going to have my dream job by this time so that I can reach this goal by this age. It's never going to work out the way that you think it is 99 times out of 100. So try really hard to just think about what you would be comfortable with in the moment. And I know that sounds like not the most helpful ever, but like, you'll know going into it if it's the right choice for you. And you can always apply to grad school and then, you know, defer for a year or reconsider it or look at other programs. Don't put all your eggs in one basket because you really don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I like, again, it took me forever to get my BSW, which is not a bad thing. I'm glad I paced myself. But I was ready to take a break from school. So I took a year and you know, in the field, and I decided to go back because I figured it would be better sooner rather than later. And luckily I'm grateful for my parents because I was able to live with them all through grad school. Otherwise I probably wouldn't have been able to afford it or do it. So it all depends on your own circumstances. Like, I've always took the path that was right for me and not for that everyone else is taking. So don't feel the pressure to do what it seems like everyone else is doing. Yeah, put yourself first.
Thank you, thank you. So we only have about 3 more minutes. So I think we could answer one more question. I saw up here, has anyone, I know Lily, I believe, is in the child welfare.
So I was going to do CWeb, but then I like didn't know if I wanted to do child welfare right out of college. I know a lot about the program though, so if you have questions, you can ask. The one big thing is you don't have to stay in Chester County. If you do your CWeb in Chester County, I would recommend like not doing child welfare in Chester County, just because of like how they run things there. But I think that's kind of helpful to know, like you're not stuck in the county that you do it in, but it is really beneficial. I think you get a stipend. It was like $600 a month back in the day. I don't know what it is now. And I mean, in child welfare, like you learn, I mean, you deal with like everything and you just learn so much from it. It's a great field to be in. Yeah, so I mean, I knew people that I interned at Chester County Children and Youth, and then I ended up not wanting to seek employment there. So I don't know if that's helpful at all.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, thank you. Being here. Okay, thank you. So as we wrap up, I just want to say thank you for taking the time, especially on a Monday night, to come and listen to our lovely panelists speak for us. And I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Also, if there are any students who are not in Phi Alpha, I'm planning to reach out to the whole social work department and hoping to get applications started at the end of the semester. So yeah, keep a lookout for that. And as for anyone else, have a great night.
Can I add something really quick?
Of course, yeah.
Jenna, you have my email. I don't know if you have everybody else's emails, but if you wanted to email out to the participants, or I can just put my email in the chat if you guys have any other questions about anything. I have one whole job of social work experience, but I'd be happy to talk to you about, I don't know, any social work questions or older adult questions or criminal justice questions. And I know the other ladies have other areas of expertise, so I don't know if they're willing to help you out with questions, but I'm sure they are.
Yes. So if you want to provide your emails in the group chat, I will again send them out to everyone just in case they don't receive it in the chat. That would be great. Thank you. Thank you.
Mine is in there too. That's a good idea.
I posted a quick website that some of you may be interested in. It may not be for everybody, but it's the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corp. And it's a commission by this agency. It's a federal agency. And you actually get really good experience. They do loan forgiveness. So for those of you that are thinking about going to graduate school, take a look at the website that I sent you. And see what services are available to you. They provide really good supervision, and they provide a lot of really good experience for new social workers out there. If there's a call for social workers, you should definitely take a look at it and see if it meets your needs. And I'm happy to talk to you about that as well.
Thank you for that.
And I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Ingersoll for his leadership. And of course, Dr. Talley. It's so good to see them over here, and Professor Bradley. And Moira, I have something to say to you. I'm 52 years old, I'm an old person, and we're good.
You're not an old person yet.
I am, believe
Not
me,
yet.
I am old. People who are older are nice. You got to work with them. You know what?
If you need to get your knees done, Dr. P, let me know. I got a place for you.
I was listening to your story because I had the same feeling when I graduated with my master's degree. And then 3 years later, I was working for hospice. And all of my patients died. And I thought, this is the last thing I wanted to do with my degree. And it happened to be the best job I ever had, honestly, besides being the chair, of course. I love my work with hospice. So don't think too much about the people that you're going to be working with. I'm very biased, and I'm going to close with this. I think that in the next 10 years, you should really be able to have the experience to work with all populations across the lifespan. If you're able to show in 10 years that you can work with parents who are expecting a baby, or a mom who's expecting a baby, and then all the way to the end of life, you're going to be very marketable. People are going to say, oh, look at that Miss Maloney. She can work with children, adolescents. That's right. If I had hair, I would do it. We can work with children, adolescents, and even end-of-life care. She's one to watch. You know, you really want to stage your experience for the next 10 years. So it's not something that just happens, oh, I'll just do whatever. You should really be conscious about making the decisions for the next 10 years for your career. That's what I want for you guys. That's it. I'm done. I'm done being parental.
Thank you. Thank you. If anyone doesn't have anything else, you're free to go. Have a great, great night.
Good job, Phi Alpha. Great night. Thank you.
Great night, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for everyone who showed up.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Great job to the Phi Alpha board, too.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you. All right. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you, Dr. Ingersoll.
Yeah, I just recorded so I can shut off now. I'm going to be able to send that to Jenna and also put it on one of my classes on the D12 so it can easily uploaded.
I was talking so much. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Oh, good. Thank you so much.